One thing to know about me is I love tea, especially Japanese tea. Coming to Santiago, Chile, I was searching for a tea experience, whether that was a tasting or a shop that specialized in tea. When I was searching for that, something very interesting came up in my search. I saw that there was a restaurant named to Time Magazine's World's Best Places 2024. And when I learned about this restaurant, my jaw dropped. It has a 10-course tasting menu using local seafood from Chile, which is known for its seafood. And also, all 10 dishes have a tea pairing. It is a tea house where they're matching the tea to the food. I couldn't believe it. I had to go. Yum Cha is located in Las Condes, near the Costanera Center, which is a very famous building in Chile. And it is in kind of like a house. I was able to get a reservation. I shared a little bit about my accessibility needs. Off we went to a very special meal. One thing about being deafblind and traveling is that food is one of the activities I know that I will always be able to enjoy. My sense of taste has not been impacted by my disability. And I really love to have culinary experiences because they tell a story, you learn about culture, you are taken on a journey, especially when you do a tasting menu like this. What's really cool about the tasting menu is it doesn't just feature Chilean seafood, it also features flavors as a fusion from Asia. So they're taking inspiration mainly from Japanese and Chinese cuisine is what I noticed when we were there. The menu had 7 savory dishes followed by 3 desserts. When we went to the restaurant, I noticed how cozy and warm it was. It apparently has only 20 seats, but in the front area, right where the kitchen is, there aren't that many tables. It's kind of a separate dining space that fills out. So I really like the intimate space. How did I make this really long dinner accessible for me? One of the things that happens in tasting menus is when they come with each dish, they introduce the dish and they tell you about it. So I asked the server, do you have a menu printed with all the dishes that we're going to be eating today? And she said yes, that they usually give it out at the end of the meal. But I asked for it at the beginning of the meal. That way I could read it and not just rely auditorily on the information. It was actually super helpful because she was pronouncing the names of the teas correctly, like according to where they came from. Auditorily, I would not have understood what she was talking about. So being able to have the names in front of me and read along was so helpful. I will say though, the menu, when it talks about the dishes, it just lists the ingredients for the food part. And I do find this a lot in fine dining, where it will just say, okay, mussels, avocado, nori, kale, but you don't actually know how the elements are put together. So I always ask people to describe the dish to me. And then you get the sense, oh, okay, this is grilled, this is fried, this is on top in a stack or whatever it is. So that's kind of how their menu was written too. I ended up writing down all my notes on the menu card they gave me, and because I really wanted to describe and how do these dishes taste and not just tell you, oh, it was amazing. The other thing I did for accessibility was my Bluetooth microphone that I use now often. It streams the audio right to my hearing aids. So I set up the microphone, and every time that the server came over, I held it up or my partner held it up. And that way I got a better sound quality to hear the information that she was sharing. Another thing that was really good for accessibility, I think, in the tasting menu is just taking time. I think that being somewhere smaller feels more comfortable for me. One thing that did happen though, that was like thing that I guess I wasn't prepared for, is that one time when I was taking notes, the server came and cleared my dish when I wasn't done yet. And I was so surprised when I looked up, my plate was gone, because it just, I guess, really surprised me because I really wasn't done, and I'm so like territorial about food. Like I'm going to finish every last bite on my plate. But I didn't see at all. It reminded me how narrow my vision is. Just looking down in this space, I didn't see what was happening right here. And I didn't feel it either, which super surprised me. After that, I was able to come up with a solution with the server, who was very apologetic and said, next time I will confirm and communicate with you verbally before taking your plate. And they brought me extra broth, which is basically what was left in my dish. So I really appreciated the care and attention they placed towards me. All right, now let's talk about these dishes. First of all, our server, Giselle, was very knowledgeable. I asked so many questions and she was able to answer them. Dish number 1 was croaker, tomato, bell pepper, and cacho de cabra. This croaker fish was like a meaty white fish that had a very flavorful broth with chile around it. And it was super delicious and it's fresh, a nice way to start. And it had little round tomatoes in a grid on the top. So there were about 9 little tomatoes. And I expected them to be very sweet, and they were actually well balanced. They were not overly sweet. The tea was a pu'er tea, which if you are familiar with Chinese tea, you know that is a Chinese tea. And it is, when you look at it in its whole form, it looks like bark. That's what it looks like. It's fermented. So that was an interesting taste to kind of just pair and start off with. This first tea was a pu'er tea. It was so delightful. It's fermented. And then the plate with the fish is so good. This fish is spectacular, as well as the broth. And these little tomatoes. The second dish then moved into, it was a crab, apple, rocket, which is another word for arugula, and luche seaweed. The seaweed is definitely from Chile. It was like a purple seaweed. It was so cool. They had the crab. They were like round crab cake balls. I think I had 2. They tasted really good with the seaweed. So I paired that together. And then in Chile, this crab is called jaiba mora, which is like a purple king crab. And we had already had at a different restaurant a pasta that incorporated this crab. So I'm just happy to learn more about it and have it in a different form. That was paired with a green tea, which was amazing. This was my favorite green tea of the day. And it was from China, Huangshan Maofeng. Amazing, well-balanced, but still very light. The pairings of the tea were really spot on. They would enhance the flavors of the dishes. The third dish, we had asparagus, beans, mussels, kale, nori. And that description is so below what the experience was. Like, you cannot imagine how delicious this dish was. The mussels were grilled. The asparagus was crunchy and short. Then you had a crunchy kale on top and a really, really good sauce. And then that paired with a watanabe kabusecha green tea, which I thought paired very well with the dish. But I think it was just so interesting to have all these different flavors. And the chef was actually out of town in Japan as we were eating there, which I thought was very cool. I'm like, this is a serious chef who is studying his influences. The next dish that we had, dish number 4, was bonito, kohlrabi, herbs, and chili oil. Bonito was like the base. It was thick cut and it was flambéed, like with a torch. This had a chili oil, which was the star. It was spicy. It was great. There were herbs from their garden on top. So I loved that they were growing things and then using them in their dishes. And our server told us to mix everything up and get the oil on top of the other element. That dish, I could have had like triple the size. I like wanted more of that. One of the herbs that they had on there was thyme flower. Have you ever had thyme flower? I don't think that I have ever tried it. We're talking about how Chilean cuisine is not spicy. So it was so nice to get a spicy dish with flavor as part of this tasting menu. They were not afraid to bring in the spice, to bring in what is authentic to their Asian cuisines. It didn't seem like it was watered down for a Chilean palate. It was more like, we're gonna bring this to you and bring you that experience, and we're not afraid. So I thought that was so cool. I had a rooibos tea from South Africa, which actually is an infusion because that comes from a different plant. It doesn't come from the tea plant. But while this is not a tea that I seek out often, it paired really well with the dish. And I was super impressed. Creativity and their knowledge of tea and what would pair. But I know that they test and they prepare this ahead of time very carefully. All right, number 5. This was elvers, mung bean, parsley, and horseradish. So elvers were these little thin fish, river fish, that tasted very good. Sometimes I would get like turned off if something is super fishy smelling or tasting, but these fish were really nice and mild. Nasturtium was on top, which is an edible plant. There was some fried parsley as an element, which gives a crunch, which gives the herb. And that was a very earthy and comforting dish, which I really loved because I could see the progression. We went from lighter dishes to more hearty dishes, less broth, more sauce. Tea that I had with that one was it says Dong Ding Oolong tea from Taiwan. So that was a very nice oolong. I remember that it was nutty and toasted. So it paired really well with the earthy kind of dish that we were having. Okay, dish number 6 was hake, Chinese cabbage, and Sichuan peppercorn. This dish blew my mind because it numbed my entire mouth, but not just numbing it, giving it like this unbelievable flavor as I could feel my tongue and my mouth numbing. It was kind of like sweet and tart at the same time, and the flavor kept changing. So I had never experienced this before. My partner explained to me that this is a common sensation in Chinese cuisine, but I had never experienced it myself. And so I was very impressed with how powerful this dish was. Like, they were not afraid to serve this again to the Chilean customers. The fish was thick and it was fried, but it wasn't like actually fried in a batter or anything. So the tea paired very well. This was oolong tea as well, from China though, a different oolong. I didn't write much about the tea. It seems like I was overwhelmed by this dish and the numbing sensation. So I was all about that. I think it's what I wrote here is that the tea gave me a similar sensation, but I don't know if that was because the numbing sensation was so powerful. All right, dish number 7, the last savory dish, was conger eel, char sui, cherry, cucumber, and red shiso. So this had a plum sauce, and that was really interesting and unexpected for me. And we were told that this eel was the best fish in Chile, so it seemed like it was a very high quality fish. My partner got the tasting that was not 10 teas, it was 5 teas and 5 sakes. So I got to try a little bit of his sake as well. The sake that they served with this one, they said, was named the best sake in the world in 2017. That's Nanbu Bijin Shinpaku from Junmai Daininjo in Iwate, Japan. It was really good. I really liked it. I thought it was very balanced. And the plum sauce was surprising. It's not something that I've had before. This was served with a pu'er tea again. So this is a dark tea from China. So they opened and closed with pu'er. Then we served it to the desserts. The first dessert they brought out was a honeydew, green shiso, and huacatay dish, and it had a perilla in it, which I learned is like sesame. I don't know if it's a direct translation, but this honeydew was frozen and also made into like a sorbet. This was a palate cleanser dish, and it was very cold. I'm not such a fan of like cold dishes for desserts. If you ask me like, oh, do you want ice cream or cake? I'm gonna pick the cake. I thought a good palate cleanser, but I would not have like wanted more of it. So I had frozen honeydew, sorbet of honeydew. The huacatay from the garden is like Chile's basil. It was fresh, clean. It did the job of palate cleansing. And it was served with a jasmine pearls green tea from China, which is a classic tea if you know jasmine. And I actually don't seek out jasmine tea, but it was perfect to pair with this palate cleanser dish. It was a classic flavor, very floral, very light. And I thought it was a beautiful complement. Dish number 9 was pineapple, ginger, basil, and mote, I think. I don't know exactly how to pronounce that. The dish was also a cold dish. It had fried wheat berries in it. So they were like a crunchy cereal. That was my favorite element. They had pineapple sashimi, which kind of like sliced and a thin slice on top. And I think there was a grilled pineapple element, candied ginger. It was a very layered dish. And it was interesting. That was served with a oolong tea, also from Taiwan, which Taiwan is known for their oolong tea. And that was a little bit sweet, so it kind of paired well with this dessert. And now for my favorite dessert, number 10, it was a peanut dish with peanut like 5 ways and a Cantonese sauce. Definitely a dish for peanut lovers. It had fresh peanut with crunch. It had a peanut sorbet. It had peanut cake, which was served in like little cubes in the dish, which was really fun to like find a cake cube. And also foam. I really enjoyed the crunch. The cake was nice. I could have had more cake. The server told us to go through the middle and kind of get all the elements with our spoon so we could really taste the desserts, the intentions. Tea that was served was a South Korean red tea called moricha, and it was a really nice compliment, a nice way to close. Now, I would say that for my preference, I would have loved the desserts to have a little bit more warm elements. The savory dishes in this menu were out of this world, extraordinary. I can totally see why this place was put on Time Magazine's 50 best places in the world for 2024. It felt like someone's masterpiece, like an artist creates something that you are never going to get out of your head. That's how I felt about this multi-course meal. And I love the experience of sitting down somewhere and feeling like I'm carried away and transported to things that I've never heard before. It's very tantalizing, right? For the mind to have someone present to you these different dishes that they have come up with that you've never would have conceived yourself. So I love that experience. Like, what is the chef going to come up with now? What is that surprise? What is that delight? What is this experience? And it's accessible for me because I can eat, I can talk, and I can really enjoy that. So I think when we're traveling, don't feel like you have to travel like other people or people that you see like, oh, I have to be able to walk around a lot or climb a mountain or, do all these things. You can travel in the way that works for you, and that is good enough. If you want to travel somewhere and just eat your way through the city, do that. Just have fun and enjoy your life. So thanks for coming with me to Yum Cha in Santiago, Chile. Let me know if you would like to do a tasting menu like this with tea pairings with creative dishes on your travels. If you want to see more videos on inclusive and accessible travel, subscribe to Blindish Latina and let me know all your questions in the comments, and I will see you next time.